Hey, my name is King, or as some of you might know me better, Israel. I've gotten around, but hopefully you recognize me from my own channel, King Tannic. There's a new show coming to the Burnettwork that I think is pretty exciting. Welcome to the Otaku Experience, hosted by yours truly. There is going to be a weekly series where we dive into the news and the world of anime, manga, and whatever the heck else Japan has to offer us. The show will be pre-recorded and premiere on Thursdays at 2 p.m. Pacific Time or 5 p.m. Eastern right here on the Burnettwork YouTube channel.
Greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, Robert Meyer Burnett. I invite you to watch and listen to the Designing Hollywood podcast, brought to you by Martika Ibarra and the great, legendary Hollywood costume designer, Marilyn Vance. I am afforded the wonderful opportunity of co-hosting the show. If you are interested in the magic of Hollywood, the design of Hollywood, the clothes of Hollywood, watch the Designing Hollywood podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts from, or find the video version on the John Campea YouTube channel. That's right, the Designing Hollywood podcast. Why would you ever want to miss it? Especially if you love the movies.
Robservations with Robert Meyer Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your evangelist of the imagination, and of course, the as-yet undefined existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, me, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I am once again robcasting at you, imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. It's great to have you here, and of course, as you know, I'm always looking for interesting things to talk about, and this story dropped on Friday. You might have seen it across the interwebs. But before I get to it, I want to give a shout out. I want to give a shout out to my fellow YouTuber, Just Some Guy. Yep, Just Some Guy. I've been watching him for years. I really started watching him a lot during the pandemic. I really like his channel. He has a lot of great takes on pop culture, and he does a lot of comic book industry reviews, analysis, all that kind of thing. He's great channel. But he made a very funny video. This is the video. Star Trek Picard boldly goes back to basics, and he name-checked me like 167 times. It was hilarious. I had no idea this video existed. I just clicked on it because I wanted to see what he had to say about Star Trek Picard Season 3. And gosh, it was nice. So, Just Some Guy, thank you. I was very amused by your video, and I was more happy that you liked Season 3, at least the first episode. So we will see what you think as the show progresses. But thanks very much for the shout outs. It was very much appreciated. So here's the thing. I've been a big reader my whole life. And when I was younger, I read all of Roald Dahl's, I guess call them books for young people, books for children. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator, which with the Pernicious Knids that has the great poem, attention please, don't dare talk, don't dare sneeze. Don't dare doze or daydream. Your health, your very life's at stake. Have any of you ever had the chance to meet a child named Goldie Picklesweet, who on her 7th birthday went to stay with Granny down in Kent, and on the 2nd day of dearest little Goldie's stay? Anyway, I won't get into it. I won't do the whole poem, but it's something I remember from my childhood. Danny, the champion of the world, of course. Why am I drawing a blank on it? James and the Giant Peach. There was lots of great Matilda. There was lots of great books Roald Dahl wrote, and I read them all. And one of the things I always liked about his books as a kid was they had an edge to them. They were kind of nasty. And I liked that. I mean, in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the kids were awful kids, and horrible fates befell them. Now, in the movie, which I liked, it was a little nicer than the books, but I really liked the dark Grimm's fairy tales aspect of Roald Dahl's work. I liked it, and as a kid, like, nobody was policing what I was reading when I was a child. I was reading everything. My parents would buy me books. My aunt would buy me books. And when I was like 10 and 11 years old, I started getting into really hardcore horror fiction, like the most violent, sexually explicit stuff you can imagine. Stuff that was wholly inappropriate for me to read. I mean, it started out with Stephen King, but Stephen King stuff wasn't sexually explicit, really. And while violent, it wasn't graphically violent. It was more R-rated violent, but it was the British horror authors. And the reason I discovered the British horror authors was the movie The Manitou, directed by William Girdler, which is based on a horror novel by British horror writer Graham Masterton. Well, what I did not know at the time about Graham Masterton, and Graham Masterton wrote, I read The Sphinx, The Djinn, the Tengu, about a Japanese demon taking revenge for World War II. I loved his books. I did not know that he also wrote sex manuals for couples in the interim. So it was no surprise to me, like in Graham Masterton's books, which were also British, like Roald Dahl's, maybe it's because there was a little bit more of a repressive society. The stuff that happened in those books was pretty extreme. And then there was also James Herbert, another British horror writer who his early work was incredibly graphic, both sexually and full of violence, like The Fog and The Dark. Fog, no relation to Carpenter's film. But I was reading this stuff as a kid. But it started with Roald Dahl's stuff. I mean, I want to say that it was Roald Dahl because, he was writing about, giant insects in James and the Giant Peach was kind of horrific. The Witches, he wrote that later. I wasn't a kid when I read it, but when it came out, I read it. It was nasty. Nasty in a good way, nasty in a fun way, nasty in the best possible way. And I read all of these books as a kid. Nobody told me I couldn't. And whenever I was reading books, like, here was the thing. I didn't want to recognize myself in the books. I wanted to read about other people. Like, how did James get into that peach? Why were there giant insects in it? I don't know, but I wasn't James. And I would read books. The whole point was to read stories about things that weren't going to happen to me. And I didn't want to see myself reflected in the stories. I would read any story. When I was reading Frog and Toad Are Friends, which they're now adapting, I didn't think to myself, I want to be Frog or Toad. I was reading about Frog or Toad. I didn't have to be Frog or Toad, nor did I have to see myself reflected in those characters. When I read a story, I wanted to see Frog and Toad. I remember, it's probably canceled now, but I've talked about it on my show before. There was a book called, like, The 8 Chinese Brothers. Let me see if I can find that. Which I also loved, because, let's see if it was that. I don't know. The 5 Chinese Brothers. All right, yeah, I'm sure this book has been canceled. But I loved this book. The 5 Chinese Brothers is an American children's book written by Claire Hutchett Bishop and illustrated by Kurt Weiss. It was originally published pre-World War II in 1938 by Coward McCann. The book is a retelling of a Chinese folktale, The 10 Brothers. Here we go. According to Wikipedia, though often considered a classic of children's literature, The 5 Chinese Brothers has been accused of promoting ethnic stereotypes about the Chinese, particularly through its illustrations, and many teachers have removed the book from their classrooms. However, the book has had some defenders. In a 1977 School Library Journal article, Selma G. Lanes described the illustrations as cheerful and highly appealing, characterizing Weiss's broad cartoon style as well-suited to the folk tale, a genre which deals in broad truths. Based on a 2007 online poll, the National Education Association listed the book as one of its teachers' top 10 books for children. Now, full disclosure, I'm going to show you a picture that was on the cover of this book. I didn't think I was going to do this, so forgive me for not having this ready to go like I have the rest of my material ready to go here to talk about this particular subject matter. So here's a picture from the 5 Chinese brothers, and I can honestly say I can totally see why some people might find this illustration problematic, but it was written in 1938. The point was, when I was a kid, I loved this book. One of the Chinese brothers drinks the whole ocean at one point, and I loved it. And I never thought about ethnic stereotypes as a child. I mean, why would you? There's a lot of things that I didn't think about as a child because I was a kid and I was able to discover it on my own, and I could make up my own mind. I liked our elementary school. I went to Island Park Elementary School on Mercer Island, Washington. That's where I'm from. I grew up there. I learned to swim at the Jewish Community Center there. I went to elementary school there. I went to South Mercer Junior High, which is now gone. Now it's Mercer Island Middle School. They combined the 2 junior highs into one middle school, and I graduated from Mercer Island High School. I could never afford to live there now, but at the time it was a great place to be and grow up. But so the point is that I spent a lot of time in the library there. I checked out a lot of books, and when I found a book like a book by Roald Dahl, I liked the fact that it was nasty. I liked the fact that when he described witches, for instance, they were ugly and he described them the way I felt witches should be, which made it cool. I'm like, yeah, give me more. And the reason Roald Dahl's books appealed to me was that kind of, no one wrote like him. He had a bent to him that was dark, man. And I loved that, and it made me want to read his other books because of that edge. Even as an adult, in October of 2001, the month after 9/11, a bunch of us were invited to a convention in Madison, Wisconsin over Halloween weekend. And it was really interesting because Harlan Ellison was a guest there. And I want to say we stopped in the Milwaukee airport. It was something like that. It was something like the Milwaukee airport. And they had a great used bookstore in the airport, which I had never seen before. I thought that was the greatest thing ever. And so I had found a book of Roald Dahl, adult. I mean, I had read Tales of the Unexpected as I got older. That was made into a TV series. And then I found his book. So anyway, Harlan Ellison was going with us to the convention. And I went to the used bookstore by myself. We had a little bit of a layover, and I found this Roald Dahl book called Switch Bitch that had some novellas in it that I'd never heard of before. So I bought it, and I'm taking it up to the counter, and Harlan Ellison himself was right behind me. And he goes, he knew we were the media kids, and he was the literary genius. And I was frankly intimidated. I'd met him once before when I was much younger in Seattle, and I was totally intimidated. He's like, "What book are you buying?" and I'm like, I'm totally going to get judged. There was nothing I could do. And I had Switch Bitch with me, and Harlan Ellison smiled, and he approved. He approved that was the book that I chose to buy. Well, anyway, so you might have seen it. It was in Variety, and there was stories that broke on Friday that Roald Dahl is being rewritten by a group. And to make it more, let's read the story. This originally broke in the Telegraph in the UK, and I have that original article that was in the Telegraph, and let's go through it. Here it is: the rewriting of Roald Dahl. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Across his beloved children's books, hundreds of the author's words have been changed or entirely removed in a bid for relevancy. First of all, let me just say, there is no other way. This is flat out censorship. Full stop. I don't care what you're doing. If you're rewriting an author's words, I mean literally, and changing the meaning, changing the author's writing, it is pernicious censorship for whatever reason. You are changing the past. It's exactly what George Orwell was reminding us or warning us about. I don't care how you couch it. Right now, The fact that you're doing this at all, you're the problem. You're the evil ones. Let's get this straight right away. Because who are you to go back and change history? Who? What gives you the right? I don't care if the family or Roald Dahl's heirs said it was okay. It is not okay. This is, here's my thesis statement. And when you hear why they're changing it and how they're changing it, I think you'll agree with me. So let's delve into this article, shall we? Words matter, begins the discreet notice, which sits at the bottom of the copyright page of Puffin's latest edition of Roald Dahl's books. The wonderful words of Roald Dahl can transport you to different worlds and introduce you to the most marvelous characters. This book was written many years ago, and so we regularly review the language to ensure that it can continue to be enjoyed by all today. Put simply, these may not be the words that Dahl wrote. The publishers have given themselves license to edit the writer as they see fit, chopping, altering, and adding where necessary to bring his books in line with contemporary sensibilities. By comparing these latest editions with earlier versions of the texts, the Telegraph has found hundreds of changes to Dahl's stories. Language related to weight, to mental health, to violence, to gender and race has been cut and rewritten. Remember the Cloud Men in James and the Giant Peach? They're now the Cloud People. The small foxes in Fantastic Mr. Fox are now female. In Matilda, a mention of Rudyard Kipling has been cut and Jane Austen added. It's Roald Dahl, but different. Dahl, who died in 1990, is one of the most successful children's authors of all time. Born in Cardiff in 1916 to Norwegian parents, he was an ace fighter pilot during the Second World War before turning his hand to writing. More than 250 million copies of his books, which include novels such as The Witches, The Twits, and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, as well as his memoirs Boy and Going Solo, have been sold worldwide. His stories are characterized by dark humor and unexpected twists. This is not the first time that his work has been controversial. The Oompa Loompas, the diminutive employees of Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory, have been extensively reimagined over the years. In recent years, Dahl has been criticized for anti-Semitism, misogyny, and racism. The modern editor of Dahl faces a dilemma: how to retain Dahl's compelling spikiness, which has enthralled generations of readers, while bringing it in line with the hair-trigger sensitivities of children's publishing. I don't think editors face a dilemma at all. Editors should preserve the words that Roald Dahl wrote, full stop. Full stop. Roald Dahl is not alive to defend himself, nor change his words, so you shouldn't either. Puffin's overhaul is the result. While there have been tweaks before, there has never been an alteration on this scale. Take The Witches, for example, Dahl's memorably unpleasant 1983 novel about a young boy growing up in a world ruled by a coven of secretive witches. A 2001 version of the text includes the following passage about yanking women's hair to check if they are witches. In the story, witches are bald and wear gloves to disguise their claws. Here's the original version, the 2001 edition. "Don't be foolish," my grandmother said. "You can't go round pulling the hair of every lady you meet, even if she is wearing gloves. Just you try it and see what happens." This is the 2022 edition. "Don't be foolish," my grandmother said. "Besides, there are plenty of other reasons why women might wear wigs, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that." This is a story about witches and the supernatural. And you're soft pedaling it like it's a story about witches. Anyway, I would say that that's pretty drastic. Unsurprisingly, given the witches' subject matter, many of the edits are to do with depictions of women. Chambermaid becomes cleaner. Great flock of ladies becomes great group of ladies. You must be mad, woman, becomes you must be out of your mind. The old hag becomes the old crow. A witch is always a woman, went the 2001 version of the book. I do not wish to speak badly about women. Most women are lovely. But the fact remains that all witches are women. There is no such thing as a male witch. That became simply, a witch is always a woman. There's no such thing as a male witch. So what you're missing is, I do not wish to speak badly about women. Most women are lovely. But the fact remains that all witches are women. That was removed. That is straight up fucking censorship. Full stop. There's no reason, first of all, who is it you're trying to protect and from what? You're reading a book about witches, and Roald Dahl's wicked sense of humor pulled no punches. Who are you? Who is anyone to go into a book and change it? You know, I've often joked on Let's Get Physical Media, the show we do on Sundays, Dieter Bastian and I, that one day someone's going to find my Amazon buy list, or they're going to find the movies I've bought, whether they're hardcore, extreme exploitation cinema, whether it's 70s Bush pornography, whatever it is, in addition to all the cinema classics that I buy. Whatever it is, that someone's going to come knocking on my door and demand I give up half my film collection because of these reasons. Children do not need to be protected from ideas. They need to be taught how to think about ideas, and not what to think about ideas, but how to think. Critical reasoning skills are what children need, not a sanitization of a great author's works. That doesn't help kids. The fact that we are infantilizing our children to protect them from some boogeyman is doing them more harm than good. When I was a kid, the only medicine I heard that kids were on was hyperactivity medicine. My sister was on it. That was it. How many kids now are medicated? Now, some people would say, okay, there's a lot of things that have been diagnosed now. But is that the best thing in the world for children that have yet to go through puberty? I don't even think we have the research on it. But I'll tell you one thing. Preventing children from exposing themselves or exposing others to ideas presented in books, whether those ideas are good or bad or indifferent, you're not doing children any favors by not allowing them to learn how to think about these things on their own. And the fact that anybody would go rewrite this material is frankly disgusting, and it is undemocratic, and it does not belong in a free society. You don't want people to read Roald Dahl's books, don't let them read them. But don't change his words, because where does it end? Where's the demarcation point? Anyway, these edits, I'm going on with this article, these edits mute the original sense. Elsewhere, changes give a new meaning, like below. Even if she is working as a cashier in a supermarket or typing letters for a businessman. Now it's been changed to even if she is working as a top scientist or running a business. A top scientist is not what Roald Dahl wrote. He wrote cashier in a supermarket. I don't know about you, but the last time I was at a supermarket, there was a woman cashier there. I understand that, is that denigrating cashiers at supermarkets? Or typing letters for a businessman, being a secretary? But now it's a top scientist or running a business. Why do you denigrate people that are working as secretaries or cashiers in supermarkets? Is that somehow bad? Oh, no. Let's put a false sense of even if she's working as a top scientist, what? Kids have to be top scientists now and running a business? You can't be a cashier in a supermarket? What are they writing? Who's making these decisions? The witches doing their bit for women in STEM. Other alterations are about weight. Fat little brown mouse becomes little brown mouse. Here's your little boy, she said. He needs to go on a diet. Becomes here's your little boy. In the earlier version, The narrator exclaims, "But what about the rest of the world?" I cried. "What about America and France and Holland and Germany? And what about Norway?" Now the sentence about America and France and Holland and Germany has been cut. The rest of the world is evidently bigger now than it was. This is only a sample of 59 changes found in The Witches, and it's only one of Dahl's books. Across the new editions, there are hundreds of edits, some bigger than others. In Matilda, a passage where the heroine is learning about the escapist power of literature has changed. This was in the 2001 edition. Matilda, she went on an olden day sailing ships with Joseph Conrad. She went on olden day sailing ships with Joseph Conrad. She went to Africa with Ernest Hemingway and to India with Rudyard Kipling. But it was changed. She went to 19th century estates with Jane Austen. She went to Africa with Ernest Hemingway and California with John Steinbeck. That bears little resemblance to what Dahl wrote. You know, I just watched a movie called The Man Who Would Be King, where Christopher Plummer played Rudyard Kipling in it. Michael Caine and Sean Connery are in it, and it's a fantastic movie directed by John Huston. Roald Dahl wrote Joseph Conrad and Ernest Hemingway and Rudyard Kipling for a reason. Why is Joseph Conrad less worthy than Jane Austen? Why is Rudyard Kipling less worthy than John Steinbeck? Who's making these choices? Roald Dahl picked very specific authors because they were in his mind for a reason. And people just randomly change his work? For what reason? I mean, you know what? Go back and read about Rudyard Kipling and being in India. I would rather read about somebody that went to India than reading about California and John Steinbeck. I mean, ridiculous. Elsewhere, Mrs. Trunchbull's great horsey face becomes simply her face. 8 nutty little idiots become 8 nutty little boys. 8 nutty little idiots become 8 nutty little boys. What's wrong with using a word like idiots or great horsey face? The thing is, when someone says simply her face, well, that doesn't tell me anything. A great horsey face does. Oh, but describing somebody as horsey, is that bad? Well, no, it's not bad. It's descriptive. And if someone takes it as mean, so be it. That's what Roald Dahl was writing about. Who is anyone to take his words away from him? Rather than turning white, a character turns quite pale. In another example, Matilda says she had heard that parents like this existed all over the place and that their children turned out to be delinquents and dropouts. Nope, they cut all that out. She had heard that parents like this existed all over the place. When you lose and that their children turned out to be delinquents and dropouts, you're missing context and meaning that the author's trying to convey to you. You know, this line, rather than turning white, a character turns quite pale. Let me offer you an example. When the great actor Ernie Hudson says in Ghostbusters, "I've seen shit that'll turn you white." Compare that to what these idiots would want him to say. "I've seen shit that would turn you quite pale." You see the difference? When Ernie Hudson says, "shit that'll turn you white," it's funny. When he says, "I've seen shit that'll turn you quite pale," his meaning is gone. And it's not as funny. And yet, we're letting assholes do this to Roald Dahl's work. And the thing is, I know it's one children's author. It's one author. The problem is if this becomes the norm, and they do it to everything. Freedom of speech and living in free democratic societies are to stop this pernicious shit from happening. In James at the Giant Peach, the Cloud Men have become Cloud People. Miss Sponge is no longer the fat one. Miss Spider's head is no longer black. And the earthworm no longer has lovely pink skin, but lovely smooth skin. First of all, what the fuck? What color is the head of a spider? If he describes the head as black, what is that, a racial connotation or something? And Martin Luther King preferred the term black anyway, but it's a fucking spider. And also, earthworms, he says lovely pink, but now it's just lovely smooth skin. You know what? I've never looked at an earthworm and thought to myself, that earthworm has lovely smooth skin. I've always thought of earthworms as being pink. So not only are they changing words, they basically just want to lie to kids. In the twits, a weird African language is no longer weird, while Mrs. Twit is no longer ugly and beastly, but simply beastly. Okay, so without ugly, you don't understand that beastly is also ugly? See, the thing is, ugly is the way somebody looks. Beastly might be their personality. And someone who's ugly and beastly is someone to be feared indeed. And it takes away what Roald Dahl was doing in the first place, which is being mean and nasty. And that's what he was good at. And when I was a kid, that's why I read his goddamn books in the first place. In the new version of George's Marvelous Medicine, George exclamation changes to, "Look at you! You're standing up all on your own and you're not even using a stick." And the new 22 edition says, "Look at you, you're full of beans." What does that even mean? Look at you, you're standing up all on your own and you're not even using a stick. I know what that means. Look at you, you're full of beans? What, is that person a bean bag? What are they? In Fantastic Mr. Fox, a description of tractors saying that the machines were both black has been cut. In the new Dahl world, it seems, neither machines nor animals can be described with a color. Nor can anything be fat. Bunce, the little pot-bellied dwarf, is now plain old Bunce. The small foxes, previously sons, are now daughters, while Badger's son has become a little one. Even the harmless SEO Trot has not escaped. Tortoises no longer come mostly from North Africa, but from many different countries. Perhaps more egregiously, given the story's punning title, tortoises are very backwards creatures. Therefore, they can only understand words that are written backwards. Has become simply, they can only understand words that are written backwards. And so on. Hundreds of changes to some of the best-loved children's books ever written. Even Quentin Blake's illustrations do not make it through sensitivity reading unscathed. Earlier editions of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory include 3 sketches of Mike TV with 18 toy pistols hanging from belts around his body. But the guns have been scrubbed out by 2022, as well as the related sentence. Mike TV's a cowboy. He's dressed as a cowboy. Language evolves. Few would defend retaining the N-word in contemporary publishing, or any number of other outdated racial slurs which bring the modern reader up short and do not add to the text. Well, unless you're talking about Mark Twain writing about Huckleberry Finn or Tom Sawyer. But where does the sensible pruning give way to unnecessary tinkering? We want to ensure Roald Dahl's wonderful stories and characters continue to be enjoyed by all children today, said a spokesperson for the Roald Dahl Story Company. When publishing new print runs of books written years ago, it's not unusual to review the language used alongside updating other details, including a book's cover and page layout. Our guiding principle throughout has been to maintain the storylines, characters, and the irreverence and sharp-edged spirit of the original text. Any changes made have been small and carefully considered. How about not change the text at all? How about that be your policy? Period. The rewritings of Dahl is part of a general trend for sensitivity readings, where books are screened before publication for material that might be upsetting. The practice began in children's books, where it remains most pronounced. Anthony Horowitz, The best-selling author recently talked about falling foul of a censor over a Native American character attacking someone with a scalpel. I made the changes, but I will confess they hurt, Horowitz wrote in The Spectator. It just feels wrong to be told what to write by an outside party, no matter how well-meaning. Addressing the Hay Festival last year, Horowitz commented, "Children's book publishers are more scared of cancel culture than anybody." Roald Dahl has long been controversial. This is not the first time his books have changed to reflect contemporary mores or around Hollywood interest. In the first edition of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory in 1964, the Oompa Loompas were black pygmies enslaved by Willy Wonka from the deepest, darkest parts of the African jungle and paid in cocoa beans. Dahl rewrote the characters in the late 1960s to quote-unquote de-Negro them, in his words. Now here's the thing. Roald Dahl himself did that. He changed his own words, realizing just how offensive they had grown. I don't have a problem with that. That's the author himself making those changes, and, to be fair, probably for the best. But that was the author understanding why he should do it and doing it himself. No problem with that. But it has to be the author himself who does it. In his words, for Mel Stewart's 1971 film starring Gene Wilder, the Oompa Loompas became green-haired, orange-skinned figures. By the 1973 edition of the book, they had become little fantasy creatures. But in recent years, Dahl has become an increasingly divisive figure, not only accused of racism and misogyny, but anti-Semitism too. The latter was so apparent in his writing and private life that in 2020, the Dahl family issued an apology. The Dahl family and the Roald Dahl Story Company deeply apologized for the lasting and understandable hurt caused by some of Roald Dahl's statements. Those prejudiced remarks are incomprehensible to us and stand in marked contrast to the man we knew, to the values at the heart of Roald Dahl's stories, which have positively impacted young people for generations. We hope that, just as he did at his best, at his absolute worst, Roald Dahl can help remind us of the lasting impact of words. You know, I'm Jewish. A lot of people think that I don't look Jewish. I was adopted into a Jewish family and found out later that my biological mother was indeed Jewish. I have heard anti-Semitic shit my whole life. My whole life, because a lot of people have said it to me because they don't think I'm Jewish. And it's always interesting. I'd love to live in a world where there is no anti-Semitism, but I'd rather know where people are coming from. So if somebody's anti-Semitic and they express that, then I know they're anti-Semitic. It's better off for me to know than to not know. Trust me on this one. The current review began in 2020 before Roald Dahl was acquired by Netflix, said a spokesperson for the Roald Dahl Story Company. It was led by Puffin and the Roald Dahl Story Company together. So they didn't want anything to jeopardize the sale of Roald Dahl to Netflix. I see. When approached for comment, Netflix directed the Telegraph back to Puffin. Puffin and the Roald Dahl Story Company made the latest changes in conjunction with Inclusive Minds. This is an outside company, which its spokesperson describes as a, quote, collective for people who are passionate about inclusion and accessibility in children's literature. So it's a political group that is now going to bring their political ideology and inject it into the works of others that may not feel the way they do. Got it. Organizations such as Inclusive Minds have sprung up to help publishers navigate these newly choppy waters. Oh, you mean have sprung up to make sure that their own points of view supersede anyone else's. Got it. Alexander Strick, a co-founder of Inclusive Minds, and we're going to get to them in a minute, says they aim to ensure authentic representation by working closely with the book world and with those who have lived experience of any facet of diversity. To do this, they call on a team of inclusion ambassadors with a variety of lived experience. She says they mostly work with authors writing now, but are sometimes asked to work on older texts. Occasionally, publishers approach us to consult inclusion ambassadors when looking to reprint older titles, says Strick. While this is not the main focus for the ambassadors, we believe better authenticity is achieved through input at development stages. We do think those with lived experience can provide valuable input when it comes to reviewing language to help ensure that the stories can continue to be enjoyed by all children. So on occasions, we work with publishers on classic texts. First of all, why do stories have to be enjoyed by all children? Why? Why should every child enjoy all these stories? Why can't children not enjoy stories? Why can't children be scared by stories so they don't watch or read them? What's the problem there? This idea that stories need to be enjoyed by all children is the dumbest shit I've ever heard. Kids don't love everything. Why not kids love all vegetables? Or all seafood? Or all fruits? I mean, this idea that you're going to take literature and try and make it safe for everyone makes it valuable to no one. Authors their voices need to be preserved the way they were written. That's how our society understands how we grow and evolve. You want to whitewash the past? Oh, pardon me, should I not say that? Should I say you want to, erase the past? I mean, what difference does it make if you understand the meaning? And hey, what can I say? Some teachers argue that it's the children's tastes that are changing. Scott Evans has been a primary school teacher for 8 years and works at a school in South Wales near Cardiff, where Roald Dahl grew up. He runs a website, The Reader Teacher, and has worked as a sensitivity reader. I understand the arguments some say about censorship and diminishing the author's voice, he says. However, after recently rereading some of children's books by Dahl, some language stood out as offensive, while other terms have become outdated over time. Here, sensitivity readers can make suggested adaptations to make them more accessible to children. How about allowing children to read offensive words and ask teachers or their parents about them? And how about using that as a teaching moment? And if there's outdated terminology, why not have a child ask about that and explain the outdated terminology to them rather than change it? I'll tell you one thing. I don't have kids of my own, but if a child came to me, or if I had a child and the child wanted to know about an outdated term, well, there's a moment to teach history. And there's a moment to teach how society has changed. And if there's words that some child might find offensive, let's face it, it's the adults that are... Kids don't find anything offensive. They love all this shit. It's the adults that find it offensive for them. Oh, we have to protect children from witches and Harry Potter and all that crap. I mean, it's satanic and evil and awful. Christ, if my parents knew what I was reading, I'd get in so much trouble, but they didn't. And I turned out okay. And I was reading book after book after book after book. I couldn't get enough. When you ask children and adults why they are drawn to Roald Dahl's books, it's often the sense of rebellion within them that they mention. He adds, while maintaining the spirit in children's books is essential, and suppressing it is entirely not the answer either, it's about making sure that the characters and content are mischievous and not malicious in their nature. Why? Why can't they be malicious in their nature? And who's to say? Who is this sensitivity reader to tell Roald Dahl how to write? Who is he? But these people are taking it upon themselves to change history. They're taking it upon themselves to change art as if they know better. Who anointed them from on high? Why do they get? What are their credit? What is their credentials and credibility? This is terrible, and we normalize this. It just spreads out into our culture to the point where let's do it to movies. Let's do it to TV shows. Let's get rid of All in the Family because Archie Bunker's a bigot. Let's pretend like he didn't say what he was saying on network television. Let's make sure nobody goes back and watches that show because they're going to be traumatized. The infantilization of our civilization is ridiculous. The idea that people can't think for themselves is terrible. It's not good for our democracy. It's not good for our culture. It is not good. We have people worried about the words they use. They can't even think straight anymore because they're wondering, oh, wait, which pronoun am I using here for this person or that person or what person? I mean, why don't people just say what's on their minds and say what they want to say. And if they say something offensive, allow them to stop and go, you know what, I didn't mean to use that word. I'm sorry. I know that's offensive. We can all learn from it. But this idea that we're waiting for people to use this language. So what? We're going to call the thunder gods from up on high to blast people out of existence because they used a bad word. The thing is, there are people that would rather do that than understand that, okay, not everybody knew my pronouns or not everybody knew this. And you can't expect everybody to know everything all the time about everyone. You know, it's ridiculous. I talk about Ezra Miller, and I understand Ezra Miller used they use they them pronouns, which I understand, but the Flash is a he. So when I'm talking about as a movie pundit, when I'm talking about the Flash, and in the same sentence talking about Ezra Miller, it gets confusing, and people say, Rob, well, can't you keep it straight? Well, when I'm talking about the entire entertainment industry on a daily basis, am I expected to keep I don't even know them. I've just learned that they use pronouns in the media. So I assume that's correct. I don't know. But I'm expected to know. The Oompa Loompas may be the most famous example of Dahl's earlier amendments, but they were not the only time he amended his writing. It was clear toward the end of Dahl's life his editors worked really closely with him on shaping the stories, says Chris Howard, founder of the Roald Dahl fan club, RoaldDahlFans.com. In some cases, they changed quite a lot. Fantastic Mr. Fox is a great example. His first draft was more of a glorification of thievery, one would argue, than the version that actually got published. I'm disappointed that Dahl's books have been changed, but at the same time, Dahl did okay changes to his books in line with modern mores. Some of the descriptions in the book are a bit problematic with some of the characters, she acknowledges. Nevertheless, people have said that about characters in the Harry Potter novels, and there is a way of contextualizing Dahl's work. There's Roald Dahl. Matthew Dennison, who wrote a biography of the author, Teller of the Unexpected, published last year, says Dahl was particular about the language he used. Dahl typically worked 7 days a week for a year on one of his full-length novels and was drained by the experience, which involved extensive rewriting as he worked, followed by a lively back and forth with his editor, he says. The process of editing often focused on individual words or particular expressions, as Dahl kept faith with some of the interwar slang of his childhood, and aspects of his vocabulary up to his death continued to recall the enthusiasms of English prep schoolboys. This was both natural to him and deliberate, and he resisted interference. These were the words he wanted to use. These were the words he chose to use. And yet, that doesn't matter to sensitivity readers. His relationship with his editors included marked fractiousness. On Dahl's part, he added, overruling proposed word changes made by the American editor of The Witches, Stephen Roxburgh. Dahl wrote, I don't approve of some of your Americanisms. This is an English book with an English flavor, and so it should remain. Goddamn right. When it came to children's books, Dennison says Dahl didn't care what adults thought, as long as his target readers were happy. I don't give what is B? I don't even know what this is. I don't give a something what grown-ups think, was a characteristic statement, Dennison says, and I'm almost certain that he would have recognized that alterations to his novels, prompted by the political climate, were driven by adults rather than children. Yeah, as they always are. And this always inspired derision, if not contempt, in Roald Dahl. He never, for example, had any truck with librarians who criticize his books as too frightening, lacking moral role models, negative in their portrayal of women, etc., he continues. Dahl wrote stories intended to kindle in children a lifelong love of reading, which they do, because the nasty bent that Roald Dahl's work had made me want to read more of it. And he knew that too. Dahl wrote stories intended to kindle in children a lifelong love of reading and to remind them of the childhood wonderlands of magic and enchantment, aims in which he succeeded triumphantly. Adult anxieties about political niceties didn't register in this outlook, and nor should it. This said, although Dahl could be unabashed in offending adults, he took pains never to alienate or make unhappy his child readers. Dahl is only a prominent example of a growing trend in children's publishing for content that nobody can find offensive. The latest editing since Roald Dahl, the brand, the property for which Netflix paid handsomely, and which generates millions of pounds in revenue for Penguin Random House, Puffin's parent company, against the words Roald Dahl put on the page. A cynic might say it is a way of protecting the golden goose. Words matter, especially on the bottom line. When does harmless tweaking become over-meddling? How long is it before the twits become the twits of thesis, unrecognizable from its original form? That's great, because the ship of thesis, I love that. I love this. How long before the twits becomes the twits of thesis, unrecognizable from its original form? What other children's authors are in line for the big green pencil? The way publishing is going, the rewriting of Roald Dahl may only be the beginning. I know I had to read that whole thing, but you know what? It was important to me because this is happening all the time now. And the answer is, let writing stand on its own. Our history is very, very, very problematic. Human beings are awful creatures, and one day we might be great. There's greatness in all of us, but if we forget about it, how are we ever going to learn? How are we ever going to evolve? And if we expect to get rid of every single potentially offensive thing in the lives of all children, what are we doing to them but making them unprepared for the world that we've created? Imagine if you were living in Ukraine and you had a copy of Roald Dahl's book that had been whitewashed by censors, by these sensitivity readers, and then your town is bombed out and Russian soldiers rape your mother in front of you. Then what? What kind of a world are we telling kids to live in? This world's happening right now. There's atrocities being committed every moment of every day. Don't let books and censorship protect kids or from a world that they can't be protected from. What we need to do is make people strong and give them the ability and the tools they need to survive. Survive against what could very well be terrible circumstances. And this idea that a children's book has words that somebody might find offensive and that you have to make it, palatable for all children is stupid. It's dangerous, and it's not worthy of our society. People should worry less about what's offensive to children and worry more about what's offensive to all of us. This is not the way to go. And this kind of censorship has been going on far too long, and it's going to continue on. And I'll tell you something. Children need to be given the tools to survive in this world. And censoring children's novels to make the words more palatable, taking the word fat out of a book, you can't describe anybody as fat. A big black giant spider can't be fat. A worm, you can't call an earthworm pink. Because why? How stupid are you? What kind of a world are you bringing your children up in? I don't know, but it's not going to be the world you're going to want to live in. I'll tell you that. Anyway, there's a follow-up to this article I'd like to read. And Salman Rushdie, who was attacked by, I guess I can't even say who he was attacked by. Let's just say a man that maybe was paying attention to the fatwa that was introduced on Salman Rushdie when he wrote the Satanic Verses. Took his eye, stabbed him. That was just last year. But anyway, Salman Rushdie had something to say about this. God bless this man. Salman Rushdie says, and this is from the Washington Post, Jennifer Hansen reports this. This was updated on February 19th, today at 10 a.m. A decision to change hundreds of words in Roald Dahl's children's books has drawn condemnation from author Salman Rushdie, who called it absurd censorship. His is the latest prominent voice in the heated debate sparked after a report Friday in Britain's Telegraph detailing a litany of changes by Dahl's publisher and the Roald Dahl Story Company, which manages the work's copyright and trademarks that were designed to make, by the way, his copyright and trademarks do not apply to things that have been changed. Go back to the original copyright. That were designed to make the famous books more inclusive and accessible for today's readers. Roald Dahl was no angel, but this is absurd censorship, Rushdie, a Booker Prize-winning author, wrote on Twitter, calling out the children's imprint of the British publisher Penguin Books. Puffin Books and the Dahl estate should be ashamed. Yes, they should be. Rushdie is one of the most famous authors in the world. His novel, The Satanic Verses, prompted Iran's Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini in 1989 to issue a religious decree calling for Muslims anywhere in the world to assassinate Rushdie and anyone else involved in the publication of the book. One of those people. In August, Rushdie was stabbed multiple times by an assailant at an event in New York. He survived, and his latest novel published this month. The changes in Dahl's children's books were done in partnership with Inclusive Minds, a collective for people who are passionate about inclusion, diversity, and accessibility in children's literature, according to the Roald Dahl Story Company. And then this goes on to the changes. Suzanne Nosel, chief executive of PEN America, said the organization, a nonprofit that works to defend and celebrate free expression through the advancement of literature and human rights, was alarmed at the news to Dahl's works, calling the move... hang on a second. Let me... Yeah, that's right. So Suzanne Nosel, chief executive of PEN America, this is a new idea, okay, so I'm not missing out on anything, said the organization, PEN America, a nonprofit that works to defend and celebrate free expression through the advancement of literature and human rights, was alarmed at the news of the changes to Dahl's works, calling the move a purported effort to scrub the books of that which might offend someone. On Twitter, Nosel wrote that literature is meant to be surprising and provocative, and that efforts to erase words that might cause offense only dilute the power of storytelling. Amen. If we start down the path of trying to correct for perceived slights instead of allowing readers to receive and react to books as written, we risk distorting the work of great authors and clouding the essential lens that literature offers on society. Amen. Nosel suggested that instead of revising literature and playing around with text, publishers and editors could perhaps offer introductory context that prepares people for what they're about to read and helps them understand the setting in which it was written. Others on social media warned of a dangerous precedent. You edit a couple of books with outdated attitudes, and now there's only 400 years of literature left to go, one user tweeted. Where do you draw the line? Critics say that Dahl's books are bigoted, racist, sexist, and larded with gratuitous violence. I would ask you, what's wrong with that? You know what? The human race is bigoted, racist, sexist, and perpetrates gratuitous violence every single day, and has since the dawn of time. And some writers say the reaction to the latest changes is overblown. It's good to evolve with the times, tweeted Ashley Esqueda, a writer and pop culture expert, adding, very tired of people demanding we remain locked into their childhoods. She goes on to say, good God already, seeing the insipid performative outrage at Roald Dahl's estate approving changes to his books. His estate approved this, nobody forced them. It's good to evolve with the times, it's fine. Very tired of people demanding we remain locked into their childhoods. Well, Ashley, you don't seem to understand the bigger picture here. It's not just Roald Dahl's books. It's all literature everywhere. When is it? I mean, you can't allow it to occur. You can't allow this slippery slope. But I understand you're young. You don't understand the danger of it all. It's like all that collectivist talk about, hey, communism just hasn't been done right. Really? The 20th century would beg to prove to you exactly what communism will lead to always and forever. Collectivism doesn't work. Censorship doesn't work. They try it, and look where we wind up. People die. One social media user said they were quite happy to have more inclusive versions to read to my little one. I've been horrified at the content of some of the things I read as a child, having revisited them as an adult. What's interesting about that is you came out okay. So horrified what you read as a child. Childhood is about confronting horrifying things. What, you want it all to be, I mean, it's not all hunky-dory out there, kids. Life's hard. The biggest bully is life itself. Remember that. Although Dahl's writing is globally famous, with at least 300 million books sold in 58 languages, according to the British Journal bookseller, Dahl himself is a polarizing figure who left a complicated legacy. In 1990, months before his death, he called himself anti-Semitic, called himself anti-Semitic after years of hostile public comments about Jewish people in interviews. In 2020, Dahl's family issued an apology for the writer's anti-Semitic prejudice remarks, calling some of his language incomprehensible. Relatives said Dahl's offensive comments stood in marked contrast to the man we knew. Everyone always brings up anti-Semitism. Anyone who's Jewish knows that there's anti-Semitism all around us. There always has been, there always will be. And you know what? I'd rather have somebody be honest about it, to be honest, even though I'm saying honest twice. Tell me who you are, so I see you can come. You tell me who you are, I see you coming, and I can make adjustments. It's the people that pretend they're something they're not. That's what I'm interested in, making sure I don't have to come away. So, so let's see. Let's jump in. I'm sure that the chat has been lively. Tom Jr. Jackson and Justin Toner are probably like, "Oh my God, gentlemen, I'm sorry." But there you go. So Kevin has been an imagination connoisseur and a member of the channel for 16 months. Kevin, thank you for that. David Gonzalez says Casablanca is being released in 4K in a theater. Casablanca is being released in 4K in a theater, and by you, but you're going to go see it in New York. I don't know. Anyway, I think what you're saying is that Casablanca is coming out in a theater for a day in 4K, and you're going to go see it. You also finished Tar. I love Tar. Can't wait for a member chat to talk about it. Well, that was yesterday, and we're going to have another member chat a week from next week. Cash says, I don't know what's the most concerning thing with art right now. This type of thing or AI? As someone who wants to be a writer, I'm worried about both equally. You should be. But it doesn't stop you. It shouldn't stop you from being a great writer. David Gonzalez says, so in the age of diversity, we are trying to make everything inclusive, thereby removing all eventual individual thought and inquiry. I can't understand what these so-called adults are deciding to do. Me neither. I honestly don't understand. I mean, the thing is, people are not equal. There are tall people and short people. There are people that are thin, people that aren't so thin. The whole point of all of us is that we're different, and we celebrate our differences. I mean, some people are better at other things. Some people are good at one thing. Some people are good at others. What we want is a society that welcomes us all to figure out what it is that we're good at and how can we contribute. I mean, there's a lot of things that I'm not good at, things I'm never going to be good at. I always wanted to be a good artist. Maybe if I worked at it really, really hard, I could be a good artist. But I just knew that I didn't have, I mean, I'm talking about drawing. I wanted to be an artist, a painter. I don't have it in me. Now, if someone else does that make them better than me? Do we have to put that person down and say, until you're equal with Rob? I want to live in a world where there's great artists. I want to live in a world where there's all different kinds of people that have more talent than I do, that are going to do things I can't do. This idea that we want everybody to be equal. Look, no one is equal to somebody else. We're all different. None of us are the same. There's only one of each of us in the entire cosmic infinitude of the universe. The thing is, we have to value each person because of themselves. And that's the thing. We need to value other human beings, regardless of who and what they are. Some people are good at some things, other people are good at other things. But this idea that we're going to level the playing field and make everybody the same is absurd. Who wants to live in a world like that? I would hate to live in a world with a bunch of me's, to be honest. One of me is quite sufficient. So that's the thing. We can't remove thought and diversity. We have to have it all. That's what makes human beings human beings. The thing is, we have to create a world where everybody can contribute, where everybody is allowed to contribute to however they can contribute. That's what we want. We want everybody to be able to feel that they can offer something of themselves to wherever it is they want to offer it. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm a firm believer in that, 100%. And I want everybody to have. Look, I am a person that believes in the opportunity Everybody should have an opportunity. Opportunity of outcome, people are all different. You can never make a quality of outcome shake out because everybody's different at what they do and what they're capable of. What we need is to make sure that everybody has the ability and the right and the opportunity to step up to pursue whatever it is they want to pursue, regardless of shape, size, color, creed, sexuality, religious backgrounds. Everybody should have an opportunity. I'm all for that. Cash says, what's the most concerning thing with art right now is this type of thing or AI. Oh, I already read that. That was you. I thought you had something else. But you're right again. Shum became a new member of the channel. Thanks, Shum. Just so you know, we have member chats every other Saturday, and they start at 11 o'clock. Bert says, you might not believe this, but as a kid, I read Fantastic Mr. Fox, James and the Giant Peach, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator, and I'm black. Bert, I do believe you. And by the way, if we could chat, I bet you would say that you enjoyed those books. And when you read Fantastic Mr. Fox, you were thinking about the fact that the main character is a fox. I mean, that's the whole point, is children's books, I think, can work for just about everyone. Darren L. Minnesota says, 2 words, Rob, Sub Rosa. That would be the Star Trek The Next Generation, the wondrous episode from the 7th season, where it needs to be seen to be believed. I will say this, though. On Blu-ray, it looks great. It looks great. Danny Chadwick says, imagine if they did this to H.L. Mencken. Oh, it wouldn't have gone well. It wouldn't have gone well. So, yeah, that's it's not good. Mega YouTube 99 says, your moderator Tom Jr. Jackson has threatened to boot me from the chat for trolling because I simply stated Ezra is a he, him. Just thought you should know. Well, Mega, I would say this. Ezra Miller has publicly stated that they like to use they, them pronouns. And we're polite here. If you choose to be, if you want to use those pronouns, I don't have a problem using pronouns if that's how a person wants to be identified. And since we know that person has asked to be identified by they, them pronouns, I don't think that there's a problem identifying them or referring to them as such. Doing so, not doing so, it's rude. And so that's all Tom Jr. Jackson was trying to do. And come on, Mega. You know Ezra Miller wants to be referred to by they, them pronouns. You know it. Now, we're all polite here. Now, you might not agree with them wanting to use they, them pronouns, which I totally understand. And you're totally in your right to disagree. However, in this forum, and since we do cover entertainment news here and entertainment concerns, I prefer that we use, if somebody in the public eye wants to use they, them pronouns, we're nice people. We're considerate. If that's what they want to call themselves, well, then I don't think we should have any problem referring to those people by they, them pronouns. What I cannot stand is if somebody forgets that and accidentally uses, say, he, him, when referring to somebody who chooses to use they, them. Because that's rude. We don't like rudeness. Remember, Hannibal Lecter believed in eating the rude. He did not like rudeness at all. Multiple MIGs in the next cell. Remember the fate of multiple MIGs. Hannibal Lecter wanted to eat the rude. I don't disagree with him. There's no reason we have to be rude. So that's what Tom Jr. Jackson's looking for. That's why he's a good moderator. He just doesn't want to have rudeness here because we're trying to run a tight ship. So, let's see. Dan Madrose says, Rob, I had to come on my personal account because I've just been silenced on my mega YouTube account. I find it ironic that people in the chat are the exact same snowflakes you're condemning. Well, now hang on. I think I just explained the whole thing. It's not about being... Here's the thing. You still can't walk into a crowded theater and yell fire. I mean, you can't do that. And the whole point about this channel is allowing people, every person has a story to tell, but we have to be mindful in this particular forum that we want to be polite and allow people with different, I mean, if you want to state your reason why you find the use of they, them pronouns to be ridiculous or stupid, we will listen. And I think that's a fair assessment. But to just come in and say Ezra Miller is a he or him, that might be scientifically true. But Ezra Miller has told us to use they, them pronouns. And by being told that, I think it's only polite that we do. And I think that there's no reason why we can't do that. That's something I believe in. I believe that trying to be kind and nice to your fellow man or fellow woman or not. See, I can't even say fellow man. I'll get in trouble. I hate that. I hate that I even think this way. So, Mega YouTube, you and I, in certain respects, are on the same side of things. But I do believe in politeness. I mean, it's like when you throw a party. When someone shows up that you can't stand, you're still nice to them at the party until they leave. And then you talk about them afterwards. So, John, it's good to see you, buddy. Let's see. John Wellbacker? Is that right? I really appreciate the voices in opposition to the changes. While I don't think concepts like inclusion or diversity are wrong-headed, nor do I. Doing this to Dahl's work is shockingly stupid and border on parody. Look, here's the thing. I have no problem with inclusion or diversity, but to try and make the world a safe place so nobody is offended is a fool's errand, and it's also dangerous. Here's the thing. I'm all for fighting for diversity and inclusion, but not at the expense of the work other people have done in the past. You know what? Diversity and inclusion comes about when people are smart enough to realize, like Lieutenant Uhura said in the 3rd season Star Trek episode, The Savage Curtain. In our century, we've learned not to fear words. Cash says, you can choose to be respectful of Ezra's choices and be hang on, let me read this again. You can choose to be respectful of Ezra choices and be respectful towards them or not, the same way you can choose whether to be respectful to others. Thought you should know, Rob, you set a great example, how to treat others. That's the thing. Again, there's nothing wrong with being polite to people, even if you disagree with them. Being polite in mixed company, I think, is always something that is helpful. It also helps a discussion because if you've proven that you can be polite around somebody, it shows that you have a certain level of respect for somebody to be polite. So when you sit down and have a conversation with them and totally disagree with their viewpoint, if you can do so in a respectful manner and have respectful debate, there is things to be learned and gained from that. Screaming and yelling at people that you don't like, it just devolves and it's useless. I mean, look, there's a great, I would refer everyone to Bill Maher's New Rules, whether you like Bill Maher or not. He does make the point that I've made on this show a lot, is that sometimes I wish America was run by Hollywood. And what I mean by that is the actual people that produce movies or TV on a daily basis. Because when you're making a Hollywood production, every second costs money. And you have to make your day. You have 12 hours to make your day. You don't have time for any bullshit. You don't have any time for ridiculousness. Everyone, and they might hate each other. They get on a Hollywood set, and if they fuck up and they can't make their day, they're not going to last long. So you figure out ways to resolve your personal differences, and you get to work. There's nothing better than seeing a well-oiled film crew get all the shots they need to get, make their day, make their schedule, and complete the work. It's a hard thing to do, but people in Hollywood, especially those who are in production, I'm not talking about creative executives or agents or lawyers. I'm talking about the actual working man, the people, or the working woman, or the working person that goes onto a set every day and busts their ass to make their 12-hour day. There's nothing better than that. Darren L. sends in a super chat and says, Todd Stashwick as Captain Shaw is A+. You know what? I have to tell you, now that I've met Todd Stashwick, I've interviewed him on this channel and met him in person, that guy, he's an amazing dude. I wish I had known him. I mean, apparently he told me that I met him 10 years ago at a party. I remember the party we were at, but I don't remember the experience of meeting him, which is too bad because I would have loved to have stayed friends with him because what a great guy he is. And he's a hell of an actor. John says close enough. All right. Sean Sandberg is a new member. Just became a member of the channel. Thank you, Sean. And John W78 has become a new member of the channel. Thank you. I appreciate that, John W78. Jason S has sent in a tip. So the tip link is on is in the description. So Jason S sends in a tip and says, Rob, how can we take you seriously on censorship when you vote for a government whose White House is currently using the FBI and other agencies to have authors and topics they don't like banned off social media and the internet? You'll vote to re-elect. Well, Jason, I would say that it's not as easy as that. And perhaps no, I won't re-elect. But I'll tell you, what you're saying is the current government being democratic. The problem is the Republicans are not exactly offering a very unified front now, are they? So I'm curious. I mean, I understand. I'm just saying that I don't see the current government is not doing all the things that you're saying. You're painting again with a very broad brush. So it's tough. You know, it's hard. But I don't think that the FBI and other agencies are banning people off social media. The fact is, they're looking into things. There's a lot of bad stuff happening. So, you know, let's see. Dan M makes a good point, saying we will listen to your differing opinions after silencing me on my account. Thought you were different, Rob. Third account now for saying he, him. Okay, let me be clear, Dan. If you're saying he, him on a third account, you are being rude. I have said that it's one thing to like saying what you want after I have said that this is a place where we try and be polite here. If you want to come in and be and use your third account to say he, him, you're being rude. You're being disrespectful to me. This is my channel and my show. And I'm not being, what I'm saying is I will listen to differing opinions as long as they're being presented in a manner that isn't rude to the people that you're trying to present the opinions to. And I have told you why and exactly what I'm expecting of the audience here. And the fact is, why do you feel the need to come back and call Ezra Miller he, him 3 times on a YouTube show when clearly you know that he is asked to be called they, them? He identifies as non-binary. So, you see how that is? You don't have to say he, you can say they. What is the problem? They have asked to not be called he, him, as you insist on calling they. So what, I don't understand. Can't you just say, okay, I understand. They have asked to be identified that way and not keep calling them he, him. Just be polite. That's all I'm asking for people is to be polite. The whole point of this channel is every person has a story to tell. You can say whatever you want, but when you come back 3 times to make a point, I would like to know what point are you making? The point you're making is that Ezra Miller can't be non-binary. They can't refer to themselves with they, them pronouns. I mean, you might not like that. I don't even know if I like that. But if they've asked to be called that, what's the harm in doing so? I mean, you don't even have to agree with it. But it's, it's being polite. And it's being polite to people that are also here in the chat and to my moderating staff that is trying to manage all kinds of different people here. And we're in a public forum. And, I prefer that people be polite and not rude to everybody else. That's why I think that this we have to be able to talk to people that we hate. We have to be able to talk to people we disagree with. It's a skill. And it's a skill that takes a lot to do well. And I would ask, that this is a skill that we have to muster because we're losing it, man. We don't have that ability in this country to talk to people anymore that disagree with us. And I think it's important that we have that skill. That's all. So I think that, I'll tell you right away, I think language is important. And I don't like the fact that our language gets co-opted. I mean, it's always been evolving. But to me, I would love it if we had a different, the pronoun issue didn't sound like bad grammar to me. I'm never going to buy into using they, them. Can't we create a new word? I don't know, because it's plural. I as someone who writes myself, it's difficult to I know it's not a lot to ask, but when everybody's got different pronouns and different things, it's how do you effectively communicate? Language is important. To communicate with one another, it's important that we have languages that everybody speaks so we know that what people are saying. Bert says, how about Superman's girlfriend, Lois Lane, 106? I remember that. Hang on. Superman's girlfriend, Lois Lane. Yes. Yeah, there it is. Superman girlfriend at 106. Yes. Yep. How about Superman's girlfriend, Lois Lane, 106? This is one of the this is a very famous issue where Lois Lane is turned into a black woman for 24 hours because it's important for her and to live as a black woman. And the story is called I Am Curious Black. It's a real comic, by the way. And here it is. And again, this was, who's to say? And Kurt Swan drew it. Who's to say? This is a real thing. It's real. It happened. And is it a good thing that it happened? I don't know. I mean, but it did happen. And if you're going to say, well, get mad that it happened or did happen or didn't happen, it did. It actually did happen. And, crazy. But it did. Now, listen, I have a couple of great letters I also would like to read. And so I'm going to read them. As you know, you can write me letters. Anybody can write me letters about anything. And it's free. And you can go to postgeeksingularity.com and I will read them if they're good. I want them to be good. So if you were mad at me for anything I say, please, and you can call me whatever names you want. I'll read your letter, as long as it's a decent letter. As long as there's a good point to be made. You can make fun of me or yell at me all you want. I promise. I'll still read it. Let's see. I want to find a couple of good letters. Here's a good one. This comes from James. James says, "Hey Rob, this email is literally a year in the making. I was going to mail it last March about my disdain about toxic fandom for both the love and the hate of DC films. Eventually, I decided to just calm down and not interact with anyone on the topic. You get made fun of no matter if you love or hate or don't care about the movies. Then today it happened. DC Studios announced the first half of their first chapter of films. I loved the original vision that Zack Snyder envisioned. Not the original plan with the 5-movie story arc with 3 Justice League movies, but the greenlit 2 Justice League movies and solo movies of each of the heroes. One small contained cinematic universe consisting of 2 handfuls of movies, which Snyder himself said would have ended with Warner Brothers rebooting, which is exactly what they're doing now, only we have an unfinished story. I'm excited for what was announced. New Batman and Robin film, with it being Damian. Still think that Matt Reeves will give us Dick Grayson or Robin in his films. What caught my attention was all of the other articles online from the major trades who were in attendance at the press event. Tidbits of information about why they're rebooting. As I was reading, I thought back to articles I've read over the years about the DCEU and the drama behind the scenes. In one article today, James Gunn stood up for Cavill and threw the past regimes under the bus because he got dicked around, which most of us knew. 'Twas another article in which James literally talked about how he feels DC films were mishandled by those regimes. That made me think about the article that WB execs giving Batman v Superman a standing ovation, then told Zack, less Superman, more Batman. That turned out to be true. Then the rumors of Zack and Warner Brothers arguing before he walked away from Justice League. When that movie was released, it bombed, as it should have. I clearly remember WB telling folks online that this is Snyder's version of the film. I also remember reading an article which producer Charles Roven was quoted as saying Zack brought on Joss Whedon to do dialogue, which later was not true. We heard from Ray Fisher about the problems. Everyone said he was lying. Turns out the characters of color were cut from the Justice League film. Jason Momoa stood up for him, then WB released the bogus Frosty the Snowman movie statement. Then we had that damning interview with Batman v Superman and Justice League writer Chris Terrio. Wow, everything was true. It seems like misinformation is what caused this divide and toxicity amongst viewers before Batman v Superman released. I've uploaded images of links to articles in the past I spoke of if people want to read them. Thoughts? Well, here's the thing, James. You have to remember that Hollywood is a land of PR spin. And if something isn't working for whatever reason, nobody wants to really address what's going on in the press. They want to keep it as close to the vest as they can. And I understand it's really none of our business. And when it does become our business, fandom is not exactly the most learned group of people when it comes to how things work in Hollywood. They think they might be because they read things online. But the business of Hollywood, unfortunately, still eludes us as fans. So the real problem is that when you're looking at something like what was going on with Justice League, is Warner Brothers is looking at Marvel and their Avengers movies making $1.5 billion. So are all the Warner Brothers shareholders. They're like, we've got Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman. How come our movies aren't performing like the Avengers are? So they were trying to do something they thought was good. Zack Snyder was trying to do something he thought was good. And it turns out that nobody was happy. I mean, Zack Snyder was making the movie he wanted to make, but Warner Brothers wasn't happy because they were second-guessing themselves, and they forced him to cut Batman v Superman. He eventually had to walk off Justice League. It's mismanagement, and it was never going to work. The reason I'm excited about the Peter Safran, James Gunn era at DC is because they have a plan. They have a plan and a tone that they understand, and they understand they can do R-rated movies and PG movies, and it wouldn't surprise me if we might get an animated DC movie that's G-rated. You never know. So we'll see. I hope it's good. Let's see. You guys keep firing in super chats. Sean Sandberg says, not sure if this was talked about, but what do you think the odds of Down and Out in Paris and London being changed are? That's personally one of my favorite books, and I really hope it doesn't. I haven't read those books. And look, I think that we're in a position now where there are many people that think it's okay. Many people, especially younger people, don't believe in freedom of speech. Speech is violence. Really? I never thought so. I've heard a lot of crazy shit. I wouldn't call it violence. People take it too personally. I mean, I also think that we need to, as I said, there are places that on this planet right now, there's whole countries that are their civilian population is being smashed to bits by a country that just decided they wanted to take the land. I mean, and the war crimes and the atrocities that, look what happened to Bucha. Just read up on that. Watch the 60 Minutes story about what happened to Bucha in Ukraine. Imagine if that happened here. It wouldn't be good. So I hope it doesn't. I hope it doesn't too. I'm against censorship in all of its forms. John W. comes back and says, I wanted to send more support for the beautiful way you handled the Ezra guy from the chat. I couldn't say amen loud enough for the idea that we need to be able to have real discourse with those we disagree with. Here's the thing. having discourse, having a conversation with somebody you disagree with is a great way to, one, learn to organize your own thoughts. It's like when you go to high school debate. If you ever took high school debate, you learn to argue a point of view that isn't necessarily yours, the opposite point of view from what you might believe. And also being able to talk to people with differing points of view makes you really examine your own point of view. So you understand, well, what is it you believe? And why do you believe what you believe? And the thing is, you can't really debate your own points of view if you yourself don't understand why you believe what you believe. So I've always thought that talking to people that disagree with you or are on the other side of the fence is always a productive exercise in some way, shape, or form. I mean, look, sometimes you're talking to blathering idiots that have no idea. They're on the opposite side of you, but they don't even understand why they believe what they believe. Clearly, that's a losing proposition. It's no fun. And you're not going to learn anything anyway. So don't engage. But there are sometimes talking to people that you disagree with, especially people that are very smart, that come at it from a different point of view, you can learn things. They might even sway you a little bit, and you understand. I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example that I have in my own life. I am pro-choice. I believe that a woman should have the right to control her own body. I believe that. However, I don't necessarily believe in late trimester or late abortion. I think by that time, a decision should be made. And the thing is, a baby has to start somewhere. And the first trimester, I think a woman should absolutely have control over her own body. And I believe abortion should be completely legal. I don't believe in a late trimester abortion because that's a different thing. It's changing. It changes as a baby develops. But I also understand that people that are that are absolutely, they don't believe in abortion at all. I've had enough conversations with people to understand that they honestly believe that terminating a pregnancy at any time is murder. And they believe that. And I'm not going to tell somebody that they shouldn't believe that. They do believe that. And I don't even think they're necessarily wrong. I'm adopted. My biological mother, when she was 17 years old, she didn't know she was pregnant until her second trimester because she ran on the track team, so it was not unusual for her to skip a period. And she was on Dilantin back in the day, which was a seizure drug that counteracted the effects of the pill. So she had been on birth control, didn't know she was pregnant, and my biological father, who was 26, she was 17, sent her to California by herself to have an abortion, to have me scraped from her womb out of existence. While she was sitting in the waiting room in California, where they allowed second trimester abortions, she decided she couldn't go through with it and left, went back home, and I was born. That's how close. My mother was in a clinic ready to have me aborted forever. I would never have existed, and decided not to go through with it and carried me to term. And my family that I was adopted by, the adoption was organized before I was even born. So I was lucky. But I respected the fact that my mother had a choice, and she made one. And I don't think that we should take that away from anybody. But I also understand the fact that people that believe that abortion is wrong believe that abortion is murder. And I can't tell them that they shouldn't believe that because they have very compelling reasons for thinking so. So that's why it's a tough issue. But it's always good to listen to people on the other side and not dismiss what they have to say out of hand. I've always thought that, and I've always believed that. And that's what makes human beings such interesting creatures. It also makes our government and our way of life difficult because we have to learn to work with people. Let's say, are you going to not work with somebody that believes that abortion is murder? Let's say you need them to help build a house. Are you going to not build the house because you disagree with their opinion on abortion? No. We have to get along. We have to figure out ways to talk to people. We have to figure out ways to work together to build something constructive that'll benefit all of us and still be able to disagree. This is a skill, and it is a skill that is not being taught anymore. And it should be. Science Beat says, just sending a quick hello and love to everyone. Logged in only for a few seconds. I'm tired. I just got back from a crazy party. Fingers crossed for Joy Division that they get voted in. Would that be into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Because that would be very cool. I'm a Joy Division fan. Sylvain St. Laurent sends in a $75 tip. Wow, Sylvain. That's very nice of you. Picard Season 3, Episode 1 was great. Really like your channel. Well, Sylvain, that's incredibly generous of you. Listen, all I can say is that Picard Season 3 gets better and better and better. It's really, really, really good. And I'll tell you, the story that it tells gets really big. And it's really, I loved it. And I can't wait to talk about it because I can't say anything, you know? I don't want to ruin what Terry and his merry band of pranksters have created for Picard Season 3, because it really is. Picard Season 3 is like a 10-hour movie. The first 4 episodes are Act 1. The second 4 episodes are Act 2. And episodes 9 and 10 are the shattering, gigantic climax. And I defy you, if you're a Next Generation fan, to not have a tear in your eye at the beginning of episode 9. Swear to God. Swear to God. Somebody wants me to explain capitalism. Well, here's the problem with capitalism. It's perverted in the sense that capitalism, I think, works great. I think it's the greatest economic system that humanity's ever come up with. The problem is everybody always is trying to game the system, to cheat, to bend the rules. That's where capitalism gets into trouble. And that's a very overly simplistic way of looking at things, but that's how I feel. Sean Sandberg says, was Orwell's first novel quite problematic now? I don't think so. You know, it was a cautionary tale. I think a lot of novels that were written a long time ago are problematic because the way we treated people was terrible. But it's gotten better. Darren, back again. Darren LMN says, Darren L from Minnesota says, what are your thoughts on archiving digital libraries of content we have paid for via physical media? I'm a completionist and have started this. I agree. You know, I believe, you know, there are servers that you can get. They're great servers that you can rip all your movies to and have them online. I think that's a great thing. I mean, if you've bought it, do whatever you want with it. Write a first sale. It's yours. But, you know, you just can't sell it and make a profit. But I'm all for it. I mean, the thing that I find scary about all of this is, one, all the people that I've ever met that want to limit freedom of thought, I don't like them. I don't like them because they themselves are terrified of certain aspects of human nature, and they won't admit that those aspects exist. I mean, we try and pretend that human beings are somehow not hateful, awful people. We are, but we're also great people and wonderful people. And the fact is, we can't always be great all the time. And we live in a world that is full of dichotomies. For all the greatness in the world, there's all kinds of horrible terribleness. And it's weird. It's tough. So, yeah. Joel Rolston says, hey, Rob, I hope you catch this in time. Have you seen Kelsey Grammer on the press tour for the Jesus Revolution movie? He talks about a Frasier reboot. I've not seen that, but I saw the trailer from the movie. It looks good. But I wanted to get back to James's DC EU thing. I mean, look, as I said, I'm excited about the DC universe now because James Gunn and Peter Safran have a plan. And that's what I want. I want a plan. Whether the plan works or not, it might go down in flames. But I do think that the plan's going to be good. I think it's going to be interesting. This is interesting. This comes from Alton Wang. Says all he asks is, would the movie The Departed be considered considered woke today. Whenever movies are rebooted, movies are made today and change the race about the characters. And people call it woke. But The Departed was a reboot of Infernal Affairs, and they changed the race. Some people's logic today they consider that to be woke. That's interesting, Alton. So what Alton is saying is that the movie The Departed, that Martin Scorsese, the movie that won the Best Picture at the Academy Awards, is actually based on a trilogy of movies, but The Departed is based on one of them, called Infernal Affairs, which, by the way, Criterion recently put out on Blu-ray. So Infernal Affairs is basically, it tells the same story as The Departed, but it was originally a Chinese movie, like a triad movie. And then they bring it to America and they put Americans in it. I don't consider that, I have no problem with that. Remaking movies in another country is a time-worn, long-practiced thing that's gone on for a long time. So the Japanese remade Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven as a samurai movie. The Magnificent Seven was a remake of Kurosawa's The Seven Samurai. So I don't see that I think it's cool when a foreign country makes a film and we remake it here. It's usually not as good. I mean, one of my favorite movies is Wim Wenders' Wings of Desire, and we remade it as City of Angels with Nicolas Cage and Meg Ryan. I mean, City of Angels isn't a terrible movie, but it's certainly not nearly as good or as affecting as the original Wings of Desire, in my opinion. So, yeah. But anyway, I don't think so. I don't think that making The Departed here in the English language with a bunch of Irish people, or I don't think that's necessarily a problem. I don't. So let's see. Do I have anything good? Anything good for this? Got a lot of great letters, but I'm looking for things that are. Here's one. This comes from Steven, and the subject heading is fandom and social media. Hey, Rob, I wanted to write you a letter about social media and fandom, I guess. I really wish that there was a button I could press that could end all social media, but all I can do is complain about it. You're not the only one. Do you know why people get mad at different opinions you have about something? It's because people tie their identity to these fandoms and find it a personal attack. That's why I try not to have an opinion on anything so no one gets mad at me. But people will get mad at me for not having an opinion, so that is why I don't share them. You're damned if you do and damned if you don't, Stephen. This is why I don't even like calling myself something at all, because the idea of fandom doesn't seem to exist anymore. All people want these days is outrage. They do not want your feelings to be yours. They want to control them. If they're outraged, you be outraged. That's why people tell you how to talk, tell you what to like, because they want to own your feelings. Anyway, Rob, I didn't want to write this, but I knew somebody would care. Well, Stephen, I mean, it's funny because a lot of people yell at me for talking to all different kinds of people in fandom. If I go on someone's channel or I talk to somebody or I retweet somebody's video, and what I guess what is hard for people to grasp is I like people. I like people, even people that other people say I should hate. I like them. My default position is to like most people. And even people I don't like, I try and understand them. And in a way, if this makes any sense, sometimes I appreciate the fact that I don't like somebody because I usually don't like them because they're so firm in their beliefs. And one part of me appreciates that. If someone's a total iconoclast and won't back down, I appreciate that too. I have a tendency to enjoy human beings and everything that they are, even people that I don't like, because I appreciate the fact that they elicit something in me that makes me not like them, which is in itself kind of unique and interesting. So that's how crazy I am. And I think I wish, look, in the fan community, and I've said this about everybody, there is not a lot of nuance and understanding. I mean, when people get mad at other people, they tend to distill someone's opinions down into a one-line something or other that they can point to, call them an ist or a phobe or this or that. As far as I'm concerned, no one is easily reduced to that. No one is just an ist or a phobe. And usually if they're mad about something, they have a reason. And I want to understand what that reason is. I might disagree with that reason, but I try and understand it. So here's the thing. I grew up going to science fiction conventions, and I would get into arguments with people about warp drive and whether or not you can cock a phaser, or a phaser rifle, which is a conversation I've been having the last couple of days. And in my mind, I'm always going, you can't cock a phaser. I'm going, well, look, it happened on screen, so clearly you can. Maybe it was modified. Maybe if you're out on the frontier, you have to do modifications because you can't always get the supplies you need to resupply the phaser. You need to figure out ways to make it work differently. I don't know. I don't know what's right or wrong. But, there are things that are canonical, and then there are things that they really haven't defined that are not necessarily canonical the way you think they are. It's always a conversation when you're a fan, but that's what I grew up. I love fan circles. I loved being a fan, and I'm telling you, I'm always talking to fans, and I always try and give people the benefit of the doubt because we all are fans. All of us are fans. So we all have that going for us. So here's one. Here's one from Patrick, and he says, this is from Midnight Musings. I'll save this for Midnight Musings. So let's see. I'll see what anybody else has to say. Polaris sucks. You mean the character? Blink twice if okay. Polaris sucks says, blink twice if Avery Brooks appears in Star Trek Picard. All right. Hope that was good enough. There's your answer. Andy Mays, I'm sorry about that. Andy Mays says, have you ever been on a boom scissor lift and how high? That's interesting. This is the very first super chat from Andy Mays. A boom or a scissor lift. I've been on a scissor lift is the and I don't know what you mean by like a boom, like a crane. I've been on many. On sets and things I've worked on. I've probably been on a scissor lift to the top of a sound stage 40 or 50 feet, maybe higher, inside. I've never been on one outside that high. I've been on them but that's an interesting question. But yeah, inside a scissor lift, I've gone up as high as sometimes sound stages are really, really big on the inside, or even converted warehouses or things like that. But I've shot from there. And by the way, they can be scary because depending on what you're standing on and how big the basket is that you're in when it goes up, or the railing, it's scary. So it can be scary. But and sound stages, some of the sound stages I've been in are really, really high because they have lighting grids and stuff up there. But it's dangerous, So, but that's an interesting question. I like those kinds of questions. So that was good. Anonymous sends in a tip and says, have you seen Blood and Honey yet? I have not. I've heard it's trash, says Anonymous. Well, Taylor Gonzalez saw it. He ran into the cast and crew and had a great time. He liked it. I mean, here's the thing. And here's Anonymous. I would look at it this way. So Blood and Honey was conceived of as being, real low budget schlocky movie. So I would judge it on that. Like it wouldn't bother me. It wouldn't bother me if it is trashy because it's kind of, I mean, I would say for a low budget, quick cash grab. I mean, if you watch some of the movies I even own from the 70s, I just saw a trailer. Look on YouTube and look up the massage parlor murders that Vinegar Syndrome's putting out. That was a real movie, came out theatrically, that I've owned on various formats, and you tell me. And if whether it's good or not. Murray Reich. Hello, Murray Reich. I recently rewatched the Rush Hour movies 1 and 2, and I'm wondering, can a Rush Hour 4 movie work today? I myself say not because of the demographic, especially the stereotyped humor. What do you think? I mean, that's the, these. You've got Jackie Chan, you've got Chris Tucker, the jokes they make at each other's expense. You might be right about that. Somebody's going to get mad. You can't say that. It's like, why? I mean, the funny thing about it is racial and demographic, like, we all have differences. And it's sometimes those differences, we can make fun of each other in a fun way, and it's okay. But sometimes people get offended. I mean, which line, where do you cross? Like, I like making fun of people based on culture, as opposed to get personal with it, because culture is easily understood. Like making fun of people's culture or enjoying people's culture. Like, then if it's culture, because we all recognize that we have certain things in common, family members, everyone's got a crazy aunt or uncle, and making fun of that is more palatable. I mean, when you get personal, then people get angry, or you suggest that certain kind of people are better than others based on traits. It's not fun. But yeah, I think that I think a Rush Hour movie today could work because a lot of the humor could be poking fun at the current political situation that we find ourselves in. Narf says, I highly recommend you rewatch Super Bowl 49. It's good for you. Do I have to? Really? I don't know. I don't know. That's just, I can't. Why do you make me, why do people do, why does everybody want to make me relive that day? Why? That was a tough day, man. But hey, what are you going to do? Halftime show's good. Oh, well. Everyone always says that. I'm sorry, I'm having flashbacks. Okay. I'm gonna end, and maybe I'll end this show with this. This is an interesting letter. And I've never really addressed this on the show, but this letter came in from Anonymous. No, you know what? I can't read it. This letter will blow up the chat. So I won't do it. I won't do it. So I'm gonna stay away from that. Evan asks, here's a way to get canceled. Evan asks, Rob, have you seen the guinea pig films? Disturbing. For those of you who don't know, the guinea pig films are a series of Japanese movies that are very gory and torture porn at their extreme. And they were kind of a big deal. I want to say in the 90s. I don't know if they went back to the 80s. But certain people, was it Charlie Sheen? If memory serves, like Charlie Sheen thought they were real and reported them. And I mean, they're basically truly torture porn, horror torture porn. But it's some of them are interesting. I mean, they're interesting because they are Japanese, and it's interesting to see what is going on there. But they are not the greatest films in the world. And I'll admit that, but I've seen the whole series. Tom Jr. Jackson says he watched Don't Look in the Basement on YouTube yesterday. Crazy movie. Yeah, I saw that once a long time ago, and I don't remember anything about it. But Tom, I didn't realize it was on YouTube. That's pretty crazy. Well, anyway, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gentle beings, kind souls, however you identify across the 28 known galaxies, I would say to you this was a fun show to do. Thanks for listening to me rant about censorship. I'm not a fan of it in any way, shape, or form, And I also believe that even if you disagree with people, it's okay to be polite. If you don't think that people should use they, them pronouns, if they choose themselves to use they, them pronouns, there is nothing wrong with being polite to them. I don't think that is compromising your own beliefs. I don't think that there's any problem. There's nothing wrong with being civil and polite to human beings. It's always for the best, especially if you're having a good party. You know, I mean, you never know who you're going to meet. And the more crazy people at a party, the better off the party's going to be. That's all I'm saying. So just be polite. Nothing wrong with that. So I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank my moderators, especially today. Tom Jr. Jackson, I hope you didn't wade into the shit too deeply. And you know what? I want to thank everybody that supported this channel. And I even want to thank, let's see, what was his name? Mega YouTube 99. I think, first of all, thanks for supporting the channel. And also, thank you for continuing to write in and make your point. I hope if you're still here watching, I hope I didn't put you off too much. And I hope I made myself clear about being polite amongst the chat, amongst other people. But I do understand the point you were trying to make. And, you know, you're not wrong. And it is, look, it is a slippery slope, canceling somebody. But I do think that if you've made your point 1, 2, or 3 times, it might be too much. I think a third time might be, that's where I would say you're pushing the boundaries. I think you've made your point. You make your point and we discuss it. But I want to thank you for making your point. I do appreciate that. So Tom Jr. Jackson, thank you for being a moderator. And I wish everyone a great Sunday. There's a new episode of The Last of Us on now. I'm going to go watch it so I can argue with more people, which is fun. And of course, coming back on the John Campea Show tomorrow. So remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I would say to all of you, have a better night. And I'm sure Irene Jobson knows exactly how to do that. So I will talk with you all tomorrow.